So lately I've been thinking about overeating. I used to overeat, emotional eat out of boredom, and I don't really do that anymore. I used to feel really trapped by this tendency, and I felt like it would never end. I felt sort of tormented by it. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I overeating? Why can't I stop? Why is this so habitual? Why do I feel like I don't have control over this? It was like being trapped in a nightmare. And I was never obese because my body just doesn't do that, genetically. I'm just kind of a small person, and there's like a limit to how much weight I can gain. So I was pretty chunky at one point, but I was passable, basically healthy and not too overweight. Maybe technically overweight a little bit by 5 or 7 pounds. So it wasn't a massive health issue. It was just my relationship with food not being good, feeling like I'm eating out of boredom or emotionality and that I don't have control over it. And this lasted well into my 30s. I'm only 45 now. This lasted until maybe 35 or 36. I didn't think it was ever going to end. And I was starting to feel kind of desperate. Like, wow, am I ever going to solve this? Like, what is this? Why can't I solve this? And I didn't think that I ever would. I just thought that's how I would be my whole life. The problem now, overeating, is just gone. It's just completely gone. So I've kind of been reflecting on, like, how did I get there? How did I get to this point where it's just not an issue anymore? I do remember one moment having an epiphany when I was eating, and I was going into that habit of, eating something I said I wouldn't. Maybe at the beginning of the day I said, okay, I'm gonna be good and disciplined today. But then I would just keep falling back into this automatic, habitual, like eating stuff I said I wasn't gonna eat and eating more of it than what was reasonable, eating it kind of out of boredom, and sometimes even eating it to where it wasn't like comfortable, like kind of made my stomach hurt a little bit because I ate more than I needed. And I remember having this epiphany one time. I had something really amazing and delicious in front of me, and I was eating it, and I had this thought, wow, I want this more than I enjoy it. And that was like a really profound thought. And I started noticing that over and over again in the scenario when it would come up, that I wanted the food more than I enjoyed it. Now I understand that that phenomenon is literally how dopamine works. So your dopamine spikes when you're about to get the reward, whatever it is. If it's a donut, a cigarette, alcohol, whatever, the dopamine spike comes in anticipation of getting the reward. And then it just declines when you actually receive the reward. So my perception of what was happening was accurate, and it's tied to the way that dopamine operates in the body. And just understanding that rationally kind of put me in a place of choice, because I could then start to observe that tendency, and I sort of started to realize that that pleasurable anticipation was a trick. And it was just, something that was happening in my body. I didn't at that point know that it was dopamine, but just being able to observe that phenomenon, it put me at choice because I could observe it and wait it out and decide differently. So I could wait it out and not eat anything, or I could negotiate with myself and just choose a healthier snack. There are days still when I kind of feel like overeating, and I just game it by overeating something super healthy. Some days I feel like I want a big plate of food and I want to really pig out, and so I just make a huge salad, because you can't do that much damage. Like, no matter how big you try to make a salad, it's not going to be more than like 600 calories, if that. It's just, a lot of lettuce. One of my favorite things is like eating a head of romaine lettuce, because it's like crunchy and it's got these, complex mineral flavors, and it's kind of sweet, and it like passes the time if it's a day when I feel like I need to snack on something. And I actually enjoy it. It doesn't feel like a ripoff at all. Like maybe I'm craving something salty and crunchy, and I just have that instead, and it like fulfills the craving. So understanding that phenomenon from kind of like a rational perspective really helped. So growing up, spaghetti was my absolute favorite food, and I ate spaghetti very, very often, and I would eat way more than what would be a reasonable serving size. And sometimes I would make spaghetti and eat it, and then I wanted more, so I would make more and eat more. I remember this when I was a child, because I was born in the 70s and grew up in the 80s. I was home alone a lot. I think it was like more normal to be home alone. So I don't know, maybe as early as like 9, 10, 11, 12, I was at home unsupervised, cooking my own food. and I would cook and eat too much. Cans of SpaghettiOs and just, like making fresh pasta. And spaghetti was my absolute die-hard, most favoriteest food, and I never thought that would ever change. Wow, it's like really stormy outside all of a sudden. Then I went through this phase where I eliminated processed foods and I was really just eating whole foods like fruits and vegetables. I even ate raw fruits and vegetables for about 3 years. And so I was eliminating anything processed, anything with like a lot of chemicals or preservatives in it. And during that time, I started eating zucchini noodles. And now when I think of spaghetti, I think of zucchini noodles. And like, I don't even want pasta. I've eaten it a couple times in the last, decade, and I just don't prefer it. It's kind of starchy and it tastes kind of plain and boring. To me, zucchini noodles have like a more complex flavor and I truly prefer them. So it's just kind of like a switch in my preferences. And I found that by eating a super, super clean diet, it just kind of recalibrated me and recalibrated my preferences. So that now my favorite meal that I have pretty much every night for dinner is salad. I eat salad every night and I just like it, a lot of fresh greens and, maybe some peppers, tomatoes, and some protein. And that's my favorite food. It probably sounds kind of boring to some people. I also really like sushi, but I only eat it like maybe 3 or 4 times a year. I've just noticed that by eliminating certain things, like I don't eat sugar either, except for like a handful of special occasions per year, like maybe a birthday or Christmas or something, I will have a little bit of sugar. But because I don't eat sugar, regular fresh fruits and vegetables taste extremely sweet. And I don't even really eat fruit because I just prefer a low carb diet. But if you don't eat any sugar at all and then you eat a piece of broccoli, it's incredibly sweet. It's like a treat. Or like a carrot, oh my goodness. Carrots are like candy. When you eliminate those things, you just recalibrate. And I don't feel like I'm missing out. I don't feel like I'm deprived. I feel like if I want something sweet and I eat a carrot, then I am getting something sweet. I'm getting what I want. And the other thing that has happened is like, I still love spaghetti, but I just like the zucchini noodles. And that dopamine spike of anticipation still happens. It's just that what I'm eating is a big plate of zucchini spaghetti instead of regular pasta. And if you compare those two things, a plate full of regular pasta versus a plate full of zucchini noodles, it's like hundreds of calories different. You're saving hundreds and hundreds of calories. Maybe some people out there don't need to cut calories. I'm only 5 feet tall, and so I find it useful to keep my calories lower because I just don't need very much fuel. Usually once a year, it seems like about once a year I'll eat a donut somewhere near my birthday, and like, yeah, it's good, but it's also just like kind of too much and I don't really want anymore. I've just sort of recalibrated what I prefer. So another thing that happened around overeating, I noticed, which I don't completely understand, but when I started running, I was never a consistent exerciser until I was about 36 years old, maybe 37, and I started running regularly. I don't even really run as much anymore. I'm more focused on strength training, but for a few years I ran long distance, quite a few miles per week. And early in my adjustment to running, I noticed something interesting that I suddenly started to notice when I was full. In my whole life, 35 or 36 years, I never had that mechanism within my brain that told me I was full. I'd heard of it, like my partner, when he's eating, he knows when the last bite is. He eats the last bite and he's like, whoa, that's enough. I don't want any more. I didn't have that. There was never a signal telling me that I was full. And for whatever reason, when I started exercising regularly, that mechanism kicked in. And I remember the moment it kicked in because I was eating pad thai at a local Thai restaurant with my partner. Normally, I would eat the whole thing. I love pad thai and I'm going to eat all of it because it's delicious. It's special. We don't go out very often. Not a meal that we would eat very often. So I'm probably going to eat the whole thing. And if you think about that, for someone that's 5 feet tall, a whole plate of pad thai, that's like a day's worth of calories. It's probably over 1,000 calories. And it would be really normal for me to eat it all. But on this particular night, I ate about a quarter of it and I ate a bite and I just knew this is the last bite. I absolutely don't want any more. And ever since then, I've had that function within myself and I don't know what caused that. I know the hormone leptin is tied to that feeling of fullness. So maybe that suddenly started working. And now I don't even run anymore. I mean, I walk and I'm somewhat consistent with my exercise, but it's not as hardcore as it was for a time. And I still have that mechanism that tells me when I'm full. So I'm really grateful for that. So I've just been thinking about that. Why is it that for years and years, I had the habit of overeating to the point where my relationship was really not good with food and I felt trapped by it and I never thought it would go away and then it just evaporated. And I think it was probably a combination of things, like putting myself through these trials where I would eat a pretty strict diet of just all whole foods, really clean, really healthy. Somehow I just broke that habit. And I'm really grateful because now it's just not an issue. Like once a year, I might eat an Oreo or two, and it's no big deal. I don't, sit down and eat 10 like I used to. I just have a couple and I'm like, yeah, that was good, but, a bit much, kind of sugary, kind of, overwhelmingly sweet. And it kind of satisfies that thrill for, something junky every once in a while. And then I have no problem going right back to super clean diet. I don't know why that is, but I feel like maybe some of these things can help. If somebody out there is struggling with overeating, maybe try going super clean for a while, see if it helps. Potentially endurance exercise could change your hormones in a way that makes you more sensitive to knowing when you're full and when you're hungry. I know for some of my other friends who are runners, it has the exact opposite effect, that they run, like do a long distance run, and it makes them super, super hungry, where they sort of overestimate how much they want to eat or how much they need. That just doesn't happen to me. It kind of just recalibrated my sensitivity to fullness and my sensitivity to the balance of exactly what I need for my energy. I don't know why, but and I'm glad that I don't feel trapped by it anymore, because that's a bad feeling, to feel like addicted and trapped and not in control of a substance. Anyway, those are my thoughts on overeating.